Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Anaconda am Ufer in Ufer Studio Berlin. For those of you who have joined, so welcome. And yeah, today we're going to talk with the cast and crew of Aryati, and we're going to dig deeper about like the whole process from the start to the beginning, and what can we expect when the premiere going to start next Saturday. So yeah, maybe first we have to like introduce ourselves. I'm here joined by the cast and crew. Maybe we can start from you.
Hi, I'm Ariel William from Soydivision.
I'm Umi, also from Soydivision, right? Yeah, we are
Hi, I'm Bintang Manira Manik. I'm from Soydivision. Rotterdam.
Yeah, I'm Bilawa Respati, also in the collective Soydivision, but probably to help the audience a little bit, Bintang and I are working on the music for this project. Well, I think Umi, what are you doing for the project?
So I'm working for the Dramaturgy and a little bit for the performance.
Audience kedengeran, itu kan perlu sedikit keras ya. Oke. Kita bisa sedikit keras tapi mic-nya nggak usah terlalu dekat. Ya, jadi semua bisa.
You, sir?
How? I'm good.
No, overall.
Okay. Overall, yeah. I'm co-directed the piece and also performing in the piece.
So the project itself it's not run by like a big team. It's quite small, relatively talking. So this is almost all of us, but like some of us cannot join, unfortunately. So we also have Ardian Hartono, who also performed in the piece, and we also have Kalisfil Haris, who's handling the technical aspect of the project. And we also have Nindya Nareswari, who's a lighting artist who handles the lighting and the visual. And of course, Oki Rizky Reza Utama, he's a legend. And he is, what is he doing in the project?
Set design.
Yeah, Oki also do some visual installation. So, and also we have Cindy who also works with us developing the artwork.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that later. But firstly, maybe I should apologize if like this goes a little bit relaxed. I think I don't have to apologize. We just talk, we just chat, and we're happy today to be joined by you guys who joined the live stream and by some guests that come here today. Hello.
Before eyes actually go here and here, so bear with us because we have also live audience here.
Yeah.
And there.
So yeah, untuk mempersingkat waktu, a little bit of Indonesian will come every now and then. So let's go from the beginning of this project Aryati. I mean, can one of you guys like share like how did it start? Maybe.
Yeah. So last year, actually, we Soydivision did like a listening workshop, and this workshop is not only one time, but we have like a one workshop titled Jendela Sonorama, and this is the workshop that Soydivision developed with our friends Pedro Oliveira from Brazil. He also a sound artist and an activist, let's say. And since me also work with sound, and we both concerned about the theme of listening, especially also decolonization and also practices in sound. So we did a couple of Jendela Sonorama last year. And the idea of Jendela Sonorama is we focus on like a certain like a sound phenomenon, or like it's not even music, but like sound phenomenon that happens, and it has, for example, like story behind. And Pedro is from Brazil, so, and he was started with a focus on picturing a music genre called, forgive me if I'm wrong spelling it, but Serotifanos from Brazil, which has like a lot of also colonial and indigenous story behind it. And the second one, I was the one who was sort of hosting the event, and I used Keroncong music as a topic. And when the way that we did the workshop is I, I try to research sort of like the transformation of the Keroncong music itself, since the beginning it brought by the Portuguese in the 17th centuries, the original music called fado, and it brought by the Portuguese sailor and also their slave at that time. And it basically stays and transform in Indonesia for almost 450 years. And it's interesting also to see how this music through time, like through the Holland and the Netherlands colonized time, and also Japanese time and Indonesian Revolution, and later on become like a really popular music in the 90s and early 2000s. That's sort of like the linear storyline that I've been using to explain what is the Keroncong music at that time. And it was a bit also a little bit lecture performance, so I played some example of the Keroncong music, for example, from 1920s, and I also tell a little bit of stories what happens in the Indonesian political and social phenomena at that time. And also there's like a 5 chapters from 1920s, 1942 to 45, 1965 and the communist era, and 1990s when the Suharto regime came down. And but the way that I did the workshop at that time, because I also want to make it a little bit performative, so I sort of found this fantasy character named Aryati. So I sort of like telling the story about a woman who was born in Tugu village in Jakarta in 1920s, and Tugu is like the village that there's like a Indonesian Portuguese descent also coming from. So this fictional character, I follow the whole like let's say stepping stone on the on like political points, and also the transformation of the Keroncong within the life of Aryati itself. The story come when Aryati born in the 20s, and then Aryati also grew up in the 1940s, and she experienced also the transition of power between the Netherlands and Japan, and also later on she experienced the first regime of Indonesian President Sukarno, and some political dynamic at that time involving the Socialist Party, and later on become the Communist Party. And the story, I just built up the story in the workshop just to have like sort of like performative aspects. And after the workshop, I also talked with Bilawa, for example, at that time about this, because you didn't attend the workshop, right? But we sort of afterwards like brainstorming, like, hey, this is might we have a good basis for a theater piece, because it has a storyline. And then that's what we did. We sort of like rewriting like the workshop theme into theater. Let's say simple script. It's not even a script; it was a proposal basically to apply for funding possibilities. And yeah, that's the story of the beginning of Aryati.
Oh wow, yeah. So Aryati itself turns out it's not a person; it's a personification of music, and it spans from multiple decades. So I would really like to know, like, how does this concept, which is quite broad and quite unusual, became like a script. Maybe let's start with the collaboration where you guys met with Umi, and how does this idea or this concept became a script?
Process.
Um, yeah, well, yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like something like kebetulan. Coincident, yeah. It's like really coincident that I made this Soydivision collective, and just they asked me if I can cooperate to work with them together, and I just finished my study, the administrative stuff at the FU, and yeah, and I just like, oh, okay, it's nice. I mean, it's like interesting project, and I just we did a lot of brainstorming with Ariel, and yeah, a lot of like material things, and I kind of like falling in love with the character of Aryati, because it's like, I don't know, I feel like very not all, but some of character, I mean some of um the kejadian, yeah, the event is like similar, like I feel like the deja vu with me. I mean, like it's similar to me, because Aryati is a woman and I'm also a woman, and so with all this history and all the colonialism and all the history and all the story of Aryati is like I feel like, okay, I know it, and I just like, yeah, I build up this story with Aryati and Ariel, and also with we did a lot of research also. Yeah, we did a lot of research and a little bit imagination and so on, and yeah. I wrote a lot with this, but I don't know what to talk about, because yeah, I already wrote a lot of about Aryati for the Soy&Zine and for the piece. Yeah.
So in my understanding is that this personification born into a woman, a woman figure. So let's talk a little bit about that, because in these decades, I mean, even now, it's woman has like a particular position in the society, and what are some of the key points, or like some of the how do you say it? Maybe discovery, because in writing this female character, because well, Umi is a woman, I believe, and but like this team is mostly men, and so where did you have to look at to really give this character like soul, not just from a male perspective? Anyone wants to? Can you repeat the question? Oh, so like, where did you have to look at? Maybe it's a question about like the research to really understand like the woman's position, because I'm Indonesian and I have Indonesian education. Yeah. Like of course, in the school I have like some female figure, but mostly when talking about the history, it's mostly like male-dominated stories.
Yeah. I mean, what I can answer, because I sort of like the one who comes with the personification of Aryati and why it has to be women. I mean, first of all, the Soydivision as a collective, as a constellation of Indonesian, let's say diaspora or migrant artists here in Germany, we do have like a, it's not concern, it's like our nature also to always brought up like the feminist feminism topics also in our practices. And since you also mentions like, since most of the, let's say, Indonesian picture of stereotype, if you telling a story, is still like male, in the male centered focus, and also the, yeah, I mean, like despite the fact that patriarchy is still a huge problem in the country, that we also want to dig deeper on like how these nations also build up by a great lot of women, and this is one of the part of the strategy that we found out, for example, during our research. Or I just mentioned an example in one of the chapter of this Aryati. There's a transition of power between the Netherlands the Japan and Indonesian revolution between the 1939 and 1942. And of course, we found out about the comfort woman or the yugunryuanfu, the practice of like sexual slavery that being implemented by the Japanese. But then, if you rewind, even like the Netherlands have also sort of like systematic womanization or like using women as an object of sexual desires, and also like discrimination, for example. Nyai or gundik, these things also part of the research that we found, and we personally also interested to dig more this violence that happens to women also, yeah. And also when we met Umi, for example, I mean Umi in the stable is just the only woman, and when we talk about also a lot of what does the feminist mean in the Indonesian context, for example, what is the feminism means in performing arts, for example, right? Maybe you want to talk something a little bit about this as well. What does it mean like now?
What do you think what it means? I mean, it's
Yeah.
the role of the woman in the performing arts, or
Yeah, part of our discussions also, because when we met, also you also incorporated another project, and we talked about international feminism, for example.
but
And this is part of the dialogue between inside our collective also.
yeah. I did research about feminism in Indonesia. Yeah, about feminism in Indonesia. Yeah. Well, it's quite complex. Actually, it's really a complex point. I mean, like, I don't know, because Aryati talked about feminism, yeah, but there is also another level of like a history and about a person. I mean, like personal, like a personal experience also. And yeah, we try to make like this is not so cliche, but it's really a personal. It's really like in the context of Indonesia, feminist in the context of Indonesia, in the context of colonialism, and now, and it's a little bit different with feminism here. I mean, in the West, and it's a little bit tricky. But what I would like to say is just because feminism in Indonesia is like you have to have a like conflict, I don't know, like melawan, to fight with the tradition. And actually not all the tradition is against feminism, but some of people like believe that the tradition is against feminism. I mean, actually it's not, but yeah, it's really long, a complex thema. I know. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I think.
May I make a short comment? Yeah. So it's just a short comment because it happens to be that a good colleague of mine, Ibu Nena here, writes actually a really good book about Indonesian women and topics of feminism in Indonesia. So probably we'll also to we will be interested on her comments on the topics, especially to view exactly this era and how that it connects to how Indonesian women being seen. Because I would like to share also from the music side of the process. In the Keroncong music, women has a thing after like reading about 50 lyrics of Keroncong music, has a particular position. For example, it's always an object of beauty. So of beauty. So to a certain extent, it is always described in a very specific way. Takes, for example, the piece itself, Aryati. This is actually a piece by Ismail Marzuki. It's a keroncong, a very popular keroncong, Aryati. And if one reads or listens to the music and reads the lyrics, it's always And it's a common theme recurring in most Keroncong music, that a man falls in love with a woman, tries to win the hearts of the woman, but then this woman is somewhere far. It's unattainable, a beauty which is very ideal, very perfect, and unattainable. So this is a love, a one-sided love. And this is a recurring themes in many Keroncong lyrics, for example. So there is this one example of how woman is being portrayed. Take another example, Juwita Malam, also a very famous piece by Ismail Marzuki. It's about a soldier, I think, who at one night, in a very short time, saw a beauty. And again, the similar theme, it's a beauty which is unattainable. So there is always this idea how it is portrayed, how a woman is portrayed. And there's a lot of example, of course, in many Keroncong music. So, it's very interesting because I haven't really found where it's the other way around, for example, where a woman meets a man and telling the stories. Or probably this is also a challenge in Indonesian language, because sometimes you can always use the pronoun, but never really know whether this is a male or a female. And you can play, yeah, dia is always he or she, and it's very gender neutral. So it could be that this is also like the way that the Keroncong music lyrics writers play with the language. No? So it can be also read in a very natural way. Could be.
So moving on, aside from a woman, Aryati is Keroncong music. So we're here also joined by these two people who have discussed and worked together to interpret Keroncong music. But if I'm not mistaken, Bintang and Bilawa, although multi instrumentalists who plays in many different genres, but both of you are not like specifically uh, play Keroncong. And so how did you incorporate Keroncong music into like your own music? I mean, do you uh, adapt to the music, or do you transform the Keroncong music itself to fit your own playing?
All right. I think we have a lot of like talks also to analyze about what is Keroncong music and how, for example, because how Keroncong music is developed and also what is the rhythm inside. So basically what we do is just to extract all these elements and then we try to make a new sound out of it, or maybe to just repeat one section of the song from Aryati and then we make a new song about it. And yeah, basically we still take some elements of the Keroncong, but at the end it's not like fully Keroncong music. There are some songs that we make as Keroncong, but most of the time we just try to extract. And if we look back again, like the history of Keroncong music also, even though it brought by Fado music, but it's only about the instrument of Fado music. And then actually the whole rhythm and then the melody or like the style that they have in Keroncong, it's also still connected to gamelan music, the traditional Javanese or Sundanese music that is already long time back happened. It's just about also, so we call maybe transmedium technique, where they transfer all the rhythm or the melody from gamelan to this instrument like chakchuk and cello. So they transfer all this sound or yeah, like gamelan rhythm and stuff to the instrument of fado music. Like so, basically, we also try to look back again to gamelan and then to add it on the piece that we have. Yeah, maybe you would add something.
Yeah, I can summarize the way that we work. by the word garap. So this is the particular practice that that I try to work with for the last couple of years. By garap, I can translate it as to cultivate something, and this is in the context in just the way Bintang describes it. So what happened is that if we take Keroncong music and take only the chord, for example, and play it just the way that we know it, it's basically a pop music. We cannot differentiate it with any popular music, Western, in particular Western music, popular music. But then the way that it makes, what makes Keroncong very particular is the way how they cultivate that particular harmony, for example. And there are a lot of elements like Bintang just explained. And this is the process that we try to mimic. So we take, for example, a small motifs from Keroncong music, and then we try to, okay, what are the elements that we can use to cultivate this specific theme? Of course, it is absurd to talk about music without listening to music, but I hope it gives some insight on how, not only how Keroncong develops, that it okay, there are some elements coming from like, let's say it's a foreign elements, but then the way that it is interpreted is very local, it's very traditional, and this is, I think, the process that we want to mimic. So to answer your questions, yes, we somehow adapt, and we try to mimic, we try to dissect what are the elements that creates a Keroncong music, and then we adapt it, so we garap it with our language, so to say.
Maybe just a little bit adding point to the questions. It was started with the workshop about Keroncong music, but when we talk about Aryati within this yet complex series of performance and events, because there's also exhibitions and listening sessions, there's also transformation, that this is not only about Keroncong music, but that Keroncong is like, how do you call it, Ausgang,
Yeah, the starting point.
the starting point of like this new work, because it's transformed. Before it was a workshop about some colonizing and decolonizing sound history, and now it's become a, let's say, performing art piece and also like visual art piece. So it's a, there's a transformations of works that already happened since the workshops and now, and the translations is, I would say, beyond music itself.
So Keroncong as a genre has a relatively long history already, and I would suspect that it experienced many transformation. I mean, you guys already dug deeper into Keroncong music throughout the history. So can you tell us like what kind of transformation that happened? Maybe its historical context.
So so I try to just to cite several musicologists who works on the theme, because, for example, it is very difficult to really trace the developments of the genre, because again, it's the questions of how the musics were archived. So that means if we want to really know the development, we really have to dig into archives, and very often this is not available, or it is very difficult to obtain. So we only know that it starts again by absorbing these elements of other music, and the way that it develops was so that first, at the beginning, Keroncong only has a very specific chord progression, very specific. So this is also what's interesting. It's only using one specific chord progression, but then many composers use this exact same chord progressions to develop different melodies. But then if one listens to that, they can listen and know this is a Keroncong. But then also the arrangement, like I said, there's a garap process, the cultivation process, how the instruments were played. And they listen to that and, oh yeah, this is a Keroncong genre. At the beginning, this is also to facilitate improvisations in the text, because at the beginning it was a pantun. So it was improvised. So you can imagine like the band, so to say, accompanies the music to accompany the singer. But then this practice changed because then, of course, the music becomes more challenging. The chord progressions change, and so they have to fix the lyrics. And then afterwards, it becomes more spread to outside Jakarta. And when it comes to, for example, to Java, they try to adapt this and by borrowing the technique of the gamelan music and transfer that technique to the instruments. For example, the cello will play the kendang part, so the drums. So it is an adaptation of the drum. It even involves hitting the body. And the chak would check the sitar, and the chuk will play sometimes the saron or the demung, and the guitar will play the gambang. So this is how they try to adapt different instruments to the music. But of course, there's also another types of developments.
Lyrics, for example.
Sorry again?
Lyrics.
Yeah, so the developments of the lyrics, yeah, it starts with pantun. So basically, it's sometimes just nonsense or just for having fun. Yeah, even Yampolsky, or one musicologist, writes in his essays about Keroncong. He said at the beginning, people are dissing each other with Keroncong, yeah? Because they just want to have fun. I'm better than you. You're not so good. My
It's almost like rap battle.
It's like a rap battle, indeed. And so people try to defeat each other in this pantun battle. Huh? But then it develops, of course. For example, starting in the Revolution era, so during the Second World War, there are a lot of lyrics about patriotism, for example. And the lyrics are then imbued with nationalist sentiments, with heroism, and also I think because it's also starts with it's also heavily influenced by the late Romanticism in the Europe. So the lyrics are very melancholic. So it's about nature. There's a lot of topics about nature, a lot of topics about love, and particularly very very prominent about brokenhearted. So there's a lot of songs about unanswered love, about broken hearts. And then it transformed again yet to the point of having dangdut. Yeah? So it's, again, it's also always transforming due to what is being demanded by the society, I think. Because again, Keroncong is a popular music, so it answers the society.
But it's also because of the popularity of the genre also, this music genre also being used by the political propaganda tools. Like there's a Keroncong Pancasila, for example, that grew up in the in Orde Baru. Yeah, there's
So what is Keroncong Pancasila?
well, it's a couple of albums that sings about nationalism, about how the Pancasila is like really the core of the nations. Well, I don't know. This is my personal opinion, but this overwhelming, nationalism and something like that also being used a bit. And also, but back before, this is also being used by a lot of artists, a composer who also wants to support Indonesian independence. They like songs like Sepasang Mata Bola. There's a lot of things that tell a story, even this is a love story, but with soldier, for example. Like there's a girl waiting for the soldier who never come. There's a little bit of patriotism about independence as well. So it's also being used in that way. Even though, but like the Keroncong that I personally grew up in the 90s, and the version of the Keroncong is already mixed with the modern music again. Like it's almost on the top to dangdut, but still, the let's say the Western instruments already there again, like because I think for some time it's only being used by traditional instruments. Yeah, I mean like I remember 90s is already like sort of like it's not even contrabass, but like they really use the electric bass. There's a use of like even drum machines, like the simple one to do the syncope and stuff like that. And this is also interesting.
I think I also want to add something. I just said that Keroncong is mostly developed in the realms of the popular music, but this is not always true, of course, because I just then got realized. I know that there are, for example, the composer Singgi Sanjaya, who composed an oboe concerto. But what's interesting about this oboe concerto is the soloist is playing the oboe, but the accompaniment is not an orchestra, but rather a Keroncong orchestra, for example. So it's a very contemporary piece, very interesting. And I know that some composers like Ananda Sukarlan and um, Jaya Suprana, who also like arrange and compose using some elements on Keroncong. So I think it's also influenced the world of the more so-called art music or seriosa music.
Wow, it's really interesting. Uh, so with all the concept, all this whole story, and turn into script has to become a theater piece. Soydivision is a collective that hosts many people with multiple different disciplines. We have musicians, we have visual artists, writers, actors, dancers. So in this project, how did you work them all together? How does the collaboration process work? Is there any uh, like is there a really like is there any direction that you both have to follow, or is there something that is aspect of the theater like given to the like special task of each member, or how does it look like, or is it like all of you in the same hierarchy and just throwing ideas in the middle? Like how does the process look like?
I mean, there's multiple questions in one question, but maybe to answer the very basic about the choose of the art medium in this case, like we call it like performing art or like theatrical aspect, is not because we're all like study theater, or only hers actually study theater, but it's just also like accidentally the transformation of Soydivision as a collective. Like we began without any plan of wants to become, let's say, a theater ensemble, but even like the earliest project of Soydivision is actually mostly driven by music, because I work with sounds, Bilawa works sounds, Bintang, and a couple of but since like the nature of the collective is actually became a platform for Indonesian creative or like an artist, that we made here in Berlin or like in Germany in general. We need like a medium that can incorporate a lot of different backgrounds, and that's why performing arts and theater is like one of the frequent medium that we choose at the end, because we can bring a lot of people in, let's say, not only the one who work with music, but also the one who work with dance, the ones who work with spoken words, the one who writes, the one who do the illustration and artwork, the one who do the video, for example. How this is why we actually comes up with this format. And to answer us about how we work between us, it's also interesting, because this is also because this is also not like I said before, like a theater ensemble that have like a fixed regie of dramaturgy or once who does music. This is more like a co-creation and collaborative process also. So I would say, maybe who wants to start how your experience working on this, because if I the one who tell, maybe it's gonna be more subjective. Umi, maybe.
Yeah, it's quite unique actually, because I don't know, I never like did it, because before in Indonesia it was like we have a long time and we have like a really fixed tasks and fixed role from from theater piece. But now it's like, for example, now did the dramaturgy, but I also doing the performance. So yeah, it's quite unique actually, but it's also like, you know, I mean, it's like I feel like I into this process. I mean, I embody with this process. This is not just this just not from Ariel or there, but this is also me. I mean, because I do a lot of things and I feel like I I own this piece also. Yeah, yeah. That's why.
Yeah, I think the process basically it's like very organic. Somehow everyone is like, okay, we start with Aryati. You send the research about, and then we all look at it, and then we see, okay, it's about Keroncong, but not really, and it's about Aryati and history and stuff. So it's a lot of information. But yeah, for me, it's also like actually we are mostly talk about the music and soundscape. I also designed some soundscape for because it's a theater piece, then we prepare for that. But there were also some points that we just have a discussion online meeting, and everyone just throw ideas. Okay, what about this, what about we change the scene like this, like that. So yeah, I think even until now on the stage, we are quite organically changing and see the possibilities. So I think it's a good thing that we keep growing and growing, and maybe if this theater piece keep continuing, it can also evolve into something very different from now. That is the interesting part for me. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we keep going with this.
Yeah, again, I I try to experiment a lot with the concept of rasa. So this is my particular choice of aesthetic, which I find it very difficult to translate. Uh, Usually people use feeling to translate rasa, but this is not it. It is, for me, rasa is something that one experiences and can only be directly realized. So the question is artistically how to achieve that state in order to create a work. I brought up this because this is how then I and Bintang, for example, develop the music. We start with very clear information. We actually receive a lot of information from Ariel and Umi. It's a tremendous work already. And but then we try to refine this. So we like you make refinements, like something that very rough, and then you try to scrape away everything excessive, and this is the process, and then you try to follow this, and oh, where this is going, and this is the process. I think also for on the stage we can probably later see probably what the end product at the point where it is premiered, it is actually quite far different from the beginning, because then the same process goes. It's not a very tremendous script, very details, but then we scrape away and try to reach, okay, what is then the essence? Now this essence that is felt by the performer is the rasa. I can only explain like that because yeah, like I said, it's more easy to experience it, to already know this is it. And probably if we perform it again, it will be then again different.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for the question of process, because also I think what diverse, we are not like sort of like a group of artists who have like, let's say, fixed studio practices. You know, like we have a studio, we work there, and we work on a certain piece per year, have a target, have an exact plan. I think most of the case, how do you call it? It's sort of like a social practice, less social engaged art creation that we have. Like we need to meet to do workshop. We need to meet people in order to comes up with a certain focus to as a work idea. And then when the idea is already there, the way we work between us also exactly. It's not like a fixed department plan. Okay, music do this, acting do that, illustration do that. But there's a lot of discussion ground that we need to talk, and everyone shall or should give it their own meanings towards certain things. And when the dialogue about our focus of interest happens in the work process, that's when the decision actually made collectively. So it's a yeah, at least that's how it works till now.
No, somehow. Somehow it works. So, yeah. From what I see, this multidisciplinary involvement doesn't only reflected not only in the stage but also outside the stage. For example, like here, from Wednesday until the night of the premiere, Soydivision also have an exhibition, Aryati exhibition. Maybe can you explain a little bit about what can we see here and what does it tell us? Yeah.
Exactly. The idea of exhibition and also the zine, for example, is to extract as many possibilities that we can have from one piece, or like one piece of work. Because for example, these three pictures here, it's a picture of a food, but but the idea behind it is we want to tell stories about the transition of power between 1939 and 1942, between the Netherlands, the Indonesians, and the Japanese. Reflected, for those of you who doesn't know, we also work a lot with foods, not in the performance, and we also cook there in the behind sometimes. Yeah, this is also like the stuff that, hey, we also have something else that we want to incorporate, and we think that this association is sort of makes sense. And also video, now it's empty, but like this is a video performance that we extract from the actual performance, and we extract it outside, so it's actually become independence. This one is about the title is called Huru Hara, but it's inspired by the tragedy of Geger Pecinan. Also, one of the incidents that sort of begins like the huge amount of discrimination in the Chinese Indonesian people later on. And this is also like one of the topic that we like to research and focus on. And that's the medium that we think also we can incorporate that, because okay, there's a filmmaker there, also there's one who works with films. That's actually one of our, we can say, like artistic strategy on extract so many things as possible into different kind of formats.
So yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the exhibition runs until the night of the premiere. The video will run also. Oh, and of course the zine. It's another strategy that we picked to document the process of creating this theater piece into writings. So the zine is available in the physical format for the first time this year.
Yeah, we have an online zine where we also document our works, but for the first time that we have a little bit more budget to print it out. But it's unique. For example, on the zine, there's not only articles, but there's a link to a mixtape, and there's also like a 3 different kind of recipe, like food recipe that inspired from the piece. There's a so yeah, we try also like to come up with this kind of, let's say,
yeah. So we have talked and learned a bit about Keroncong, like how it arrives in Indonesia, how it's transformed throughout the history. So let's talk about Keroncong today, Keroncong now, because I believe we also have a question from one of the the guests. So like the first question is about like how is Keroncong today? Is it extinct? And I would add to that, like, is it transformed? Is it mutated, or is it preserved the way it was? Always been. So how is Keroncong today?
Yeah, actually, from what I know, my father is also singing Keroncong nowadays. Well, so it's also interesting. I think they have like Keroncong Club in Bandung, that they like, basically it's the old Keroncong musician, and then they invite people to sing and stuff like this. But also at the same time, as we mentioned before, Keroncong has evolved into dangdut, for example. So I think from Keroncong that time it's already branched out into a lot of things happening, but the even the old style of Keroncong is still preserved. But I would say that it's not really reaching out the youngsters. Not a lot of youngsters would like to play Keroncong or to listen to Keroncong, which is sad. But yeah, I think we should find a way to reach out there again. And yeah, maybe you want to add something.
Yeah, because I think that's also worth to mention. So there are some clubs, like, because I also come from Bandung. For example, there's a lot of Keroncong, how do you say, die-hard fans, and they form groups and they meet regularly, and also like professional Keroncong groups still performing. I know that also wedding bands, because I used to perform in weddings as a musician. And in our circles, there are also some groups that also incorporate Keroncong, because this is still very popular, and still some songs are still very catchy to these days, especially from Marzuki. And as for the youngster now, this is interesting because, for example, if I visit my grandmother in Solo, if you go to some restaurants, you still can see some Keroncongs, even performed by youngsters. And even I think some very good groups, they even make covers of popular songs, Adele, or you name it, Radiohead, and they arrange it again with the process of garap. They arrange it for Keroncong instrumentations, and this is also very interesting. So this is how Keroncongs are nowadays. But I agree with Bintang. This is not something that how do you say, reaching out. So it's not as popular as it used to be. There are several reasons, of course, but I will not explain that at the moment. But what I want to say is that there are efforts to make it popular again. For example, in Jakarta, in I think in Menteng, there are a public Keroncong performance in a one park. I forgot which one, but it's in Menteng. So there are a lot of efforts like this.
Yeah, like my colleagues already say, there's a sort of like effort of preservation, but what I interest is actually not the effort of preservation, but like some people also use this as a way to open up discussion about things. And I think like a lot of people, Ruang Rupa also did a lot of things like this, and Mes 56 in Yogyakarta. I think there's a thing about like the things about, I don't think, yeah, cultural, to preserve our culture is I don't know if it's actually a job of certain people of doing, but I don't see myself as the one who wants to preserve a culture, but it's really precious things, but to also help us to contextualize like the life we live in at this very beginning, because that's the part of historical part, and the association of art, of like a culture in certain times can open up, yeah, dialogue and conversation. That's the things that I'm interested more, rather than preserve the music itself.
Yes, I want to give the guest that's here today to ask some questions.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm Nena. And I understand that this is a launching of Soydivision. Is it? This event today? Yeah, an introduction, a launching, maybe the first project of Soydivision? No? Ah, okay, sorry. So I thought, because in this text, I read that you have launched Soydivision only since 2 months. So I thought it's, okay. Okay, and my second question is also, Soydivision is not only focusing on Keroncong, right? No, it's just one project now. And I appreciate it very much, because by discussing about Keroncong, you and also your audience are reflecting, trying to reflect on the history of Indonesia, because Keroncong has a lot of influence by the Portuguese, by a lot of colonialism, and therefore it was also in 1920s maybe very famous. So we are invited by you guys to reflect on our history, and that's I appreciate very much. And also you mentioned about dangdut, because dangdut is the latest maybe or a current more popular nowadays, because in Indonesia the Islamic and Arabic culture is also becoming more and more popular. So the Portuguese culture influencing Keroncong has been part of the past, and nowadays we are facing a new culture or a new influence. And by having projects about music and art, I think you invite Indonesian people as well as international people to learn about Indonesian culture, and that's what I appreciate very much. And the other thing is that Soydivision is not only inviting, but also helping you yourself as an Indonesian person to reflect about the question, who are you? I'm also Indonesian. So who are we, especially who are we Indonesians being abroad? I think that's a very big challenge. And being someone as living abroad, we are always asking of ourselves, about ourselves, who are we and who and where are we going to? And I hope Soydivision can help a bigger crowd of Indonesians abroad to answer this question.
Yeah. It's basically why we are exist, because of this anxiety. It's not anxiety, because we found each other and we have like the same, exactly the same point that you have, like, because we are migrants, we are diaspora, and then we are evolving. Like our identity is like transformed, and like where we are now, where we headed. The way that we actually make this collective is like the way that we found each other and try to answer it together.
Yeah, like Bilawa mentioned before, I have written a book about many faces of Indonesian women, and the title is Indonesian Women in a Crossroad, between tradition, gamelan, etc. Then also a crossroad between then the modern culture. So it's a mini skirt, we call it. So maybe all the popular music nowadays, but also in a crossroad influenced by Islamization, which is a global phenomenon. This is also a crossroad and where to go. And maybe you guys living in Berlin, you can find the fourth road, a kind of fusion between the crossroad and a new development influenced by living in Europe and in Berlin.
May I respond to that first? Because I think it's very interesting. I would like to respond a bit, but probably of what you can. No, because this mentioning about crossroads and having the fourth road, because I think this is also an ongoing reflections also of mine, working in several pieces in the last couple of months. I'm thinking, because I think the traditional way of viewing the problem is always, to a certain extent, in a very contradictory. So it's either tradition or modern. But in several works in the last couple of months, I'm trying to approach this, for example, to think about it in a more dialectic way. So probably, yeah. So probably the fourth way is some sort of of a new dialectics. It's a new synthesis, and I think this is, and it's always an ongoing process because reflecting on the history, well, in Indonesian culture, I would say it's always a syncretic. It's always a syncretic product. It's never a purist. It's never. But although nowadays there are the dangers of the purists. So I think this danger even create another types of dialectic process, which I think very interesting to see. Very Tan Malaka.
You
Let's summarize everything.
So, because I think like we're running out of time soon, maybe I have like the last question about this project, Aryati. From my understanding, for now, the project, the theater is going to run just once in the premiere, and Saturday is the only chance. So,
Not in a lifetime.
not in the lifetime, but for now.
Let's hope the show went well. There's more support that we can do the restaging soon.
Yeah. So yeah, what's coming after the premiere? Like what's for Aryati project going forward?
Restaging of course, if it's not the end of the year, maybe sometime next year. But but we hope also that the work's gonna be translated in another form. What we thought now is like a book. Yeah, it's not maybe unusual because normally a novel first and then theater later. But now we want to experiment how if we make the theater first and then the book later. So that's a little bit clue of what's on our mind.
Yeah, cannot wait for that. To close our session today, I would like to listen from each and every cast and crew that are with us today to one notable memories of Keroncong music in your life that you maybe want to share or remember. Maybe I could start. So when I was young,
You can start.
yes, I will let you guys think first. So when I was young, my family would take me to this sego pecel restaurant every Sunday at like the last Sunday of the month. And in this restaurant, this like breakfast restaurant, like there is a little band who would play 50% popular music and 50% Keroncong music. Like what fascinated me was that they didn't change instrument. They just changed like the way they play, and it transformed by the process that I just learned as Garap. It transformed the music into Keroncong music. So yeah, it's really fascinated me. Any want to share their memories of Keroncong music?
I have a funny one, but probably Ariel first.
No, it's okay. This in Indonesia. We this is a story about my second mother. What a second mother means is in the middle, most of the middle class Indonesians, at least that I know, you have a maid who actually live in the family. They support the family by do the housings works, or like they cook or they clean. But mostly they live with the family. For example, my maid, which has become my second mother, she already been with our family even like 5 years before I was born and until now. So he's seen me born, my brother born, and also my son now. So he's my, and when I was a kid, I always playing at her work room, let's say, when she iron like the wash, and she always played Keroncong music. And that's yes, I do that every like in the afternoon after lunch or something like that, and fell asleep on it. So it's like it's a comfort sound for me. It's just like sambal and rendang. It's a comfort food, and like Keroncong music is comfort sound. Like I can sleep easily with this kind of sounds.
Okay, Keroncong, Keroncong music. Actually, yeah, it's interesting also. For me, I don't really have a lot of Keroncong music experience, but I think once it struck me and then it was just stayed. So, and also, it's not where I used to be. It happened in Solo that I was actually how old I was, maybe around 13, 14, 15, something like this. I went to Solo for a project with a very well-known composer, Pawayan Sadra. Yeah, and yeah, I just arrived there and they were like garapping something, and it's from Keroncong music. But what I because I don't really have a background of Keroncong music that time, and I listened to this and I was like, whoa, this is super cool because they use all the Keroncong instruments, but they play very weird, like uh, almost like minimalistic music, but also experimental with some crazy notes. And yeah, from then on, I was like, whoa, what's this? Shall I dig into this? And then I found out they got inspired by Keroncong. And then it happened now, I'm in their position. Like now we are doing this Keroncong, not so Keroncong music. It's interesting for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this project in particular is very personal also for me because now the title is Aryati, and Aryati comes from the work of Ismail Marzuki. And I used to live in Balikpapan before I finally moved to Bandung. So one of my very profound memory is to perform with my uncle and my father, who both are musicians. My uncle was a dalang, and they create the so-called kreasi baru, so new creations, translated to new creations of a theater piece of a musical with the title Selendang Sutra, which is also again Selendang Sutra, the silk scarf, which is also again based on the work of Ismail Marzuki. And the second thing is that in Bremen, actually, a couple of years ago, in 2013, I guess, yeah, 2013, I met my wife because we had a concert. We select 10 pieces of Ismail Marzuki, arrange it for voice and the classical guitar, and perform that in Bremen. And that's why Keroncong is very personal. Yeah, this is how I met.
Stuff that you're gonna tell your kids.
Yeah, this is how I met your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Difficult. Honestly, I don't know. Honestly, I don't have like particular experience with Keroncong because my father used to like he always likes dangdut, so not really Keroncong, but the garap of Keroncong, the dangdut one, the present one, and he played almost every morning, and it was like disturbing me in the morning because yeah, and also in Sunday, but yeah, no, I don't know, I used to it. I mean, I hear it now. I remember almost all of the lyric of the dangdut unconsciously because my father is always play the dangdut every morning with the fried banana and the coffee in the morning, and yeah, and like greeting the neighborhood, yeah, and sunny suns, like really peaceful morning, but it was not for me. But now, but now I don't know. I just unconsciously I really
You appreciate.
yeah I appreciate the childhood and Keroncong, yeah.
So thank you. So I guess that concludes our session today. I would like to thank the guests that join us today, and for those who join us from the Zoom session. Thank you. And lastly, I want to thank like the cast and crew that shared their process with us today, and wish them luck. And yeah,
If you see from Indonesia, please invite us. Kita belum pernah main di Indonesia.
yeah. So yeah, tomorrow there's gonna be a listening session that will come here also. Yeah. At 17 o'clock.
At 17:30.
17:30. So yeah, we can meet there. And the day after, of course, is the premiere of Aryati. So thank you everyone. And just to make sure, like there's someone making a comment, I'm going to read that real quick. Oh yeah.
Okay. By the way, this is the space that we work as well. If you're in Berlin and never come to our space, this is a Nova Studio. We share the space with the lovely people from Heute also. A little
So,
bit.
yeah, it's just from June to Ala. Thank you guys and girls. You are
Pak Jun.
awesome.
Ya,
Ah iya, Fortune Jun, terima kasih. Sampai besok.
Oh yeah. With that, I'm going to close this session. And yeah, thank you and see you tomorrow on Saturday. Sampai jumpa.